it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. We're exploring a little bit more in depth on how a covert narcissist can basically inherently shame those individuals in their environment without really doing a lot. Now, we all know that the the overt narcissist can definitely shame through their ego statements, through being bigger than life, through their very outward charming behaviors that is very haughty, arrogant. It's just basically like, it's all about me and you little peasants, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's very easy to identify and see the covert narcissist behavior. What's more subtle and what's more insidious is the covert narcissist sort of shaming and how that can hurt, how that can defile people, and how they can project this sort of insidious understanding or message to you that you are inherently flawed, that you are not worthy of attending to, or you are not worthy of talking to, or you're not worthy of eye contact, positive touch, positive inquiry, things of this nature. It's really through a lack of communication that the covert narcissist will injure, wound, and send this message. It's almost like, you'll know that I'm disappointed in you. You'll know that I don't approve of you. And it's this, then constant need for approval that, especially if you have been in a marriage with them or in a family dynamic, that you feel this inherently, and you feel that you have to kind of get on that cycle of trying to win their approval, to belong in the relationship, to be connected, to make them happy, so that you will then prevent their outbursts. You'll prevent those negative, ignoring. You'll try to then work so hard to get their positive attention. You'll constantly be, thinking of them as the objective and goal of your life and your behavior. So your life then becomes about pleasing them versus kind of living your own life. You're then working then to prevent their silent treatment. You're working to get them to open up and get that validation if you've been starved for that, if they have really withheld that. So it's really an abuse by withholding. It's an abuse by neglect. And a lot of people say, well, how can that be abusive? Well, neglect is a form of abuse. So for example, if you starve a child's emotional needs, if you starve their needs for attention, if you're starving their needs for guidance, if you're starving their healthy dependency needs, and you're not attending to those are just as valid and valuable and important as the physical needs. So if not even more so, because a child needs that emotional, guidance. Likewise, a spouse needs that emotional continuity. They need that emotional life. You're in essence, two people coming together with, individual needs, and it's kind of like the coming together. It's like two rocks. They eventually, work together, and the rough edges eventually soften up, and then the rocks become, working together like two peas in a pod, if you will. And as I say, you need to become emotionally naked together. And if you're not emotionally naked with this individual, you're basically in an emotional shell. And so, when you're in a relationship with a narcissist or a psychopath, you then create this emotional shell around you to react, that has to be reactive to them, that has to please their superficial or ego needs. And yes, there's some of that, of course, in every healthy relationship. But as you really grow, that emotional nakedness needs to be kind of the flourishing. That needs to be the passion. That needs to be the center. That needs to guide and direct your life, because really a lot of that is going to fall away as unimportant, or really more so unimportant and ineffective. It's not going to give you the results of that fulfillment in your life, because you're living in this emotional shell. You're living in an emotional, sort of reverberation, which then stuffs down or invalidates or makes less important your personal life, your personal kind of voice, which we're trying to help open up and give life and oxygen and air and value, resonance, and energy. And really, that's the seed of your passion. That's the seed of really what's missing. It's kind of what's creating that feeling of void, like something is missing, or something I'm not connecting in a full belonging way. I'm feeling kind of separate, alone, isolated, and, kind of that inner woundedness, or what we call, that inner void, which has been created and reinforced by when we're in narcissistic or psychopathic relationship. And it tends to get worse with time. And so when we're talking about really identifying this in covert narcissist or psychopathic relationships, is realizing that this feeling, this deep emotional wound underneath, is what needs to be attended to, validated, and then released and let go. So because when we're in that emotional shell, we tend to stuff it down. We tend to stifle it. We tend to, just speak, just try to perpetuate it and not realize it and not work through it in the way it needs to be worked through. And so this, then becomes, kind of shut down. And when you shut that down, if you don't attend to it, it will shut you down until you, until you attend to it. So that's really what depression is about. And that's what anxiety is about. It's because this emotional shell has now taken over your life, and things have become too frantic. Things have become too frenetic. Things have become too chaotic. And you're now, needing, that inner life, that inner voice is striving for attention. So people, if you've shut it down, for a long time, it becomes really repressed, and you'll feel a lot of weakness and, disease in your body and in your mind. You'll just basically shut down until you then awaken that inner voice. And that is really what we're talking about right here. And then also to understand the cause of that is that if you have lived in that emotional shell, in kind of a superficial, reactive personality, if you will, realize too that the treatment that has become chronic, that validation, that consistent over time, what we call chronic, ongoing, continual, becomes reinforced. In other words, that emotional shell that you've had to be hardened. We talk about a hardened person or hardened reality. It's, they've hardened your heart or hardened your emotions to your own inner life. If it becomes chronic and ongoing, that becomes basically a mood, and it becomes a hardened mood, and then reinforced over time, that becomes basically an identity. So, if that has now become an identity, which is now unfulfilling to you, or really, not giving you that connection to life, or that really feeling of belongingness, you've now kind of felt isolated, you need to break free of that hardened shell. And we do that through our recovery journal. We do that through the stream of consciousness, because you're able to really give life and validation to that inner voice, which is crying for validation and affirmation, what you truly want, what you truly are, who you truly want to become, how you truly feel and resonate and not feel ashamed about, who you truly, your true values. So the narcissist might have certain values, very judgment, very harsh, very critical, and you've internalized that, and that's their perspective on life. You might have a whole different perspective that they have squelched or, basically annihilated because you are threatening to them. And so if this has affected all areas of your life, it's very important to identify that and to realize that now that this has become basically what we call a defense mechanism, and that this negative reinforcement is a defense mechanism of the narcissist. And a defense mechanism is what is used to protect somebody from a very painful or unconscious feeling to help them deal with it. So if if your personal growth is threatening to the narcissist, or your true life is a threat to the narcissist, they are going to engage in these defense mechanisms, and you're going to then match their behavior in like vibration. So in other words, if you have been treated a negative validation, you are going to react with a defense mechanism. So a defense mechanism, put your dukes up. They're insulting you. You're going to come back with, explaining and justifying yourself, or you're going to react with a defense mechanism. You're going to engage in further defense mechanisms. Defense mechanisms are then to protect yourself. And that can become the form of over drinking. That can become, the form of self-sabotage, where you're not able to self-validate yourself and you become underemployed in life. You become an underachiever. You become emotionally drained all the time. You become emotionally depressed. That's a defense mechanism. You might compulsively shop. You might compulsively debt. You might compulsively overeat or compulsively undereat. These are defense mechanisms as a reaction to this. So a lot of your anorexias, bulimias, they're trying to, get rid of this toxic negative influence of this relationship. It's very intense. So it's very important for you to identify these defense mechanisms and what you have done basically in your life to react to this person and realize that it's no longer serving you. And let me go back to my notes here because I've got a couple pages of my writing in my notebook. And so furthermore, the defense mechanisms are subconsciously used by a narcissist. So they're not aware of it. And oftentimes the narcissists, they don't want to change. They don't think that they've done anything wrong. This is me, they're very haughty, very arrogant. They're just going to keep on. And especially the psychopath, they really don't have any empathy. So they don't feel any need to change. They're just going to they're going to perpetuate it. So, and so really the tool, the answer is to get what we call an awareness. So what we talk about in awareness, a knowledge, when you learn something, you're learning something new. You're growing in awareness. For example, if you're studying painting and you're looking at all the different paint types and you're looking at all the different varnishes and the different thinners or the different glosses, you're raising your awareness. You are learning. So when we talk about personal growth and personal learning, you're increasing your awareness, which is your understanding through emotions and vocabulary what is going on. So you're identifying it, you know it, you have a knowledge, you have an increased awareness, and then that becomes part of your personal growth and your personal knowledge. So when you grow in awareness, you are then becoming aware or awake to what was unconscious before. So hitherto, before, this was going on and you were unconscious of this, you were unaware. And that can then unconsciously direct your life. So if it's led you in a position or place in life where you're no longer happy, content, fulfilled, it's no longer serving you, it's not working for you, it's disempowering for you, this is just, I can now own this, I can see it, I can identify it, I'm growing in my awareness. Now it's time to take action. You have to take action because knowledge is knowledge, but knowledge applied is power. So you have to apply that knowledge. And let's just see here. And because if you've been chronically mistreated, and then that has then become, an insulted mood, that mood becomes an identity. So we need to have a shift. We need to have a shift of awareness, which becomes then a shift of thought pattern, which becomes a shift of mood, which then becomes a shift of personality and a shift of identity. So rather than keeping a reactive identity to this narcissist, you're now creating that source within you. And that is now the source of what is actually true, correct, and your personal power and your own validation. And it's very important to own that self-validation. And that's why we do the affirmations, the I am. And we do the recovery journal about being conditioned and really sort of programmed by your future versus this erroneous, disempowered past, which is oftentimes the reaction or the input from this insultory, derogatory, hurtful individual, narcissist or psychopathic. And furthermore, I think I'm going to pick this up in another video because I know it's a lot of content. And so, really your awareness really starts to become kind of at the precipice of understanding when you're aware that something is wrong. And I now need to call it out. I now need to deal with it, and I now need to correct it. So it's like it's correcting your behavior. It's correcting your emotions. It's correcting your thought patterns, which then corrects your validation of self, which is not just like it happens overnight. It needs to be continually worked, and you need to grow in awareness with time. So we talk about how important it is to work on this consistently on a day-by-day basis, so your learning and your awareness grows, becomes more solid and more real, and becomes more validated through time, because time, as they say, time heals, but emotional validation and consistency over time will work to really solidify your learning, and then it'll become part of you, so you no longer have to do those affirmations. You no longer, or your affirmations can go to a new level. So you grow really in personal strength and empowerment and clarity and perspective on going through time. So that is very important for you to understand what is required of you to make that leap, to make that that next step, to take it to the next level, where you're then really living and validating that without the fear, obligation, and guilt and the manipulation that is really perpetuated by a narcissist. And it's getting free of that and becoming really into your own. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.